So we're going to work on the extended response questions from numbers 18 to 22. You will need your calculator for these. Okay, number 18. Explain how you know this is the incorrect graph for the following quadratic equation. Y equals negative x squared plus x minus 6. All right, so the fact that this a, if I'm looking at it as y equals ax squared plus bx plus c, the a is negative 1, tells me that the graph should open down. The fact that the graph's opening up is the incorrect part. So my answer would be, since a equals negative 1, the parabola should open down. This graph is incorrect since it opens up. Okay. Number 19, graph the function using a table, y equals x squared minus 3. All right, so it's important to know where the vertex is so that I plot a couple points on either side. So if you remember, to find the x coordinate of the vertex, I use the formula, the opposite of b over 2a. When I look at this as y equals ax squared plus bx plus c, there is no b term, which means it's 0. So I'm going to do 0. The opposite of 0 is just 0. Over 2 times 1, because a is 1. I get 0 over 2 is 0. So that tells me the x coordinate of the vertex is 0. There's a couple different ways to go from here. You can plug the 0 in to the x, so y equals 0 squared minus 3, and you get 0 minus 3 is negative 3. So that means my vertex is the ordered pair 0 and negative 3. I'm going to put that in the middle of my chart because I want a couple points on either side of my vertex. And I'm going to count 2 down and 2 up from 0. So 0, 1, 2, and then negative 1, negative 2. All right, so you could either do this by hand, you could plug these numbers in for x, or we can go to our calculator. I'll put this so it doesn't glare, maybe there. So y equals, and I'm going to type in x squared minus 3. Okay, so I want points first, so I'm going to do second graph so that I get the table. If I look here, it's 0, see negative 3 like we figured out. And then if you go up negative 1, the y coordinate is negative 2. And for negative 2, it's 1. And then the same thing going down, negative 2 and 1. So I'm going to fill in my table with, for 1, it was negative 2. And for 2 it was 1, and the same thing in the other direction. And then I'm going to plot those points. Negative 2, 1, negative 1, negative 2, 0, negative 3, 1, negative 2, and 2, 1. And I can tell that I did it correctly because it's symmetrical. Right? So here's my parabola. And one thing you can do as well is if you go back to your calculator, I can hit graph and compare. So let me scooch that over a little. So I can compare my paper graph to my calculator, and they look the same. So that's good. Okay, next one. Graph the function using a table. So we're going to start again the same exact way. I'm going to do minus b over 2a for the x coordinate. Again, there's no b term. So my x part will be 0 over 2 times a, which is negative 2. 0 over negative 4 is 0. So again, my x part of my vertex is 0. When I find my y, negative 2 times 0 squared plus 5. So 0 squared is 0 times negative 2 is 0 plus 5 is 5. So my vertex should be at 0, 5. So I'm going to put that in the middle of my chart. And again, I can use my table to double check that that's true. I'm going to go 2 down, 1, 2, 2 up, negative 1, negative 2. I'm going to use my calculator at this point. So y equals, clear out the last one, negative 2x squared plus 5. Again, I'm going to go to my table. So So 0, 5, yep, that's correct. When I look at -1, I have 3, and -2 is -3. And then when I go 1, 3, and -3. So it's symmetrical, so I know that I did that correctly. Okay, so let's write that down. So -2 was -3, and then 3, 3, -3. All right, let's graph those. So -2, -3, -1, +3, 0, 5, 1, 3, and 2, -3. And one thing I forgot to mention, this has a -2 for the A, so I know it should open down. Same thing up here, this was a 1, so I knew it should open up. So my graph looks, it's opening down. So that part looks correct. And then we can double check if you'd like. So hit graph, put those side by side, and that looks good. And you can tell my vertex, if you count, is up at 5, 0, 5. All right, so 2 more. Use your graphing calculator to graph -x² + 2x + 7. All right, so I'm going to use my calculator, but I also want to make sure I do it accurately. So let's type it in first, -x² + 2x + 7. Hit graph. So I want to make sure I get the vertex in the right spot. Okay, so I can use calc, which is second trace, or I can try to count. So it looks to me like it's over at, I'm trying to tell, is it probably 1.8 or 1.9? So I'm going to look, well here we can also tell it's passing through my x-axis at -2 and +5. So I can put those down, -2 and +5. Okay, so it looks like my vertex is at 1, I don't know, maybe 8. So I'm going to use the table to kind of tell where that would be, because remember, it'll be symmetrical around the vertex. Okay, so there's 1.8, and then look, 2.7 and 0.7. So yep, it is, so 1.8 is the vertex, so I'm going to graph that. And then I'm just going to pick a couple of these points, so from my calculator. So I'm going to go, so 1.8 was the vertex, so let's do 0.7, and let's do 2.7. So 0.7 and 2.7. So again, if you're using your calculator, you don't have to be super, like you don't have to have a chart, but you want to get it as accurately as possible. And then, whoops, sorry, a little messy. And then double check the graph again, so that looks pretty good, except for my scribble. All right, so one more, same idea. I'm going to scooch this over so I can have the calculator in here also. Okay, so hopefully you can see both. So y equals, clear, x² plus 4x plus 8. Hit graph. So we want to find a couple key things. Okay, so it's not crossing the x-axis, so I can't do that. It looks like my vertex is left 2, so -2 and 1, 2, 3, I think 4, -2, 4. So let's look at the table and see if that looks right. So if I go down to -2, 4, yep, look, -1, 5 and -3, 5. It's symmetrical. So we're going to graph a couple of those. So let's do the vertex, -2, 4, and -3, 5, and -1, 5. Is there one more? 0, 8. And if I look on the other side, yep, -4, 8. So that looks like my calculator, I think. Let's double check. Yep, that looks like a good match on our calculator. Okay, so that's the end of that page.